Good evening and hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Larry Green. I am a dermatologist in the Washington, D.C. area, and I'm happy and honored to be here at the Aesthetic Water Cooler session on being the doctor your patients want. So that's something that we all want to do as physicians or healthcare providers, and we're going to talk about it for the next 45 minutes or so, but it's also pretty simply summarized, which I'll do at the end, I think, about being the doctor your patients want. And I think pretty much we all know this, but it's much easier said than done, and it's something I think we have to keep thinking about over and over as we see patients we see patients every day. So I'm going to leave that as a little teaser as to what I'm going to say. You probably know, but I'll leave that as a teaser and we'll move on. First, I want to thank Equa Marketing, who is sponsoring this meeting. Very lucky to have Equa behind me and behind us healthcare providers. Equa Marketing has been for over a decade. Equa Marketing is specialized in a single activity, which is helping doctors, dentists, plastic surgeons, dermatologists, and other healthcare professionals dominate internet marketing, social media, mobile and local search engine results to outclass their competition. And Equa does a very good job. They have done this aesthetic water cooler series, and I thank you, by the way, for accessing my previous talks and as well as this talk that we're going to do today. And Equa Marketing also helps sponsor and support the Facebook group, The Business of Aesthetics. And that's an excellent Facebook group. I encourage all healthcare professionals to join that Facebook group because The Business of Aesthetics, we all get together and we talk about issues that are that we all share and running a small business. These are not just physicians. These are other people who are healthcare professionals who are in the business of taking care of patients, but usually aesthetics patients. That's why it's a business of aesthetics. I did a lunch and learn session, which was really fun. I just answered questions for the day, and people had questions about how I run my business, my aesthetic business, and there are a lot of great questions, and that's also been archived, and you can look at the questions and answers to that as well if you look at the Facebook group, Business of Aesthetics. That's another, again, way that Equa Marketing helps support us physicians. So welcome you all here, and please feel free as you access this archived session. When you do, ask us questions. Write down what's not clear. Write down what you want to learn more about. Write down what you'd like to add to this discussion. So I'm going to thank you again, and let's get started. So I am going to get started about being the doctor our patients want. And I think that's something that wouldn't have been said probably 20, 25 years ago. I'll go back that far. Well, maybe 30 years ago when things started to change. Because being the doctor patients want was not so important to doctors in the pre-internet era, especially when medical insurance paid for everything and premiums weren't so high, and you would just go see your doctor. The doctor would charge his or her rate, and the insurance company would pay it. And the patient was the active listener. The patient had to listen to what the doctor said. The patient was there for the doctor's advice. The doctor dispensed it. The patient left listening to the doctor and doing heeding the doctor's advice. That is no longer, especially in this internet era, I think the way that that we can be the doctor patients want. That's not what patients want anymore. It's not what I necessarily want when I go to the doctor. It's not what patients want when they go and see us. Things have changed over the last quarter century or more, whereas the patients listen to the doctor And the doctor dispensed their advice, and the patients went home. And hopefully listened to the advice, because that's what they listened to. And then came back and saw the doctor. And it was really a session where the doctor talked and the patient listened. And the doctor said it was XYZ. The patient didn't look up on the internet about what is X, Y, and Z. They just assumed the doctor was correct. Not even assumed. They knew the doctor was correct, and went home and heeded the doctor's advice. Once in a while, I think there were second opinions back then, but rarely. So, like I said, patients do no longer go to the doctor where we hold the throne, we hold the session, and we do all the talking. That's not what patients want anymore. So how do we become the doctor that our patients want? I think today, patients expect the same from their doctors as they expect from customer service anywhere, at McDonald's or at a hotel or a department store. I am not saying I agree with this, but this is what patients expect. They expect customer service. The same customer service experience you get at retail or hotels. It's about a customer service experience. And I think that's part of what being the doctor your patients wants means. And I'm curious to hear what you guys think about that. But I've been a physician now for almost 30 years, and a dermatologist for 20 some years. And I have seen things evolve, especially with the internet, that we are now at the level of giving customer service, good or bad. We are, the patient, being the doctor the patient wants, involves giving them a customer service experience. So, gone are the days where the doctor talks and the patient listens. We're in the days of providing a customer service experience. That's what being the doctor the patient wants means. And in today's world. And I think the number one thing, and we'll go over this over the next half hour or so, the number one, as a physician, customer service experience that's important is to listen. Not for the patient to listen to the doctor, but for the doctor to listen to the patient. That, I think, by far is the most important thing involved in providing an optimal patient experience in today's world. The pages, the chart is flipped. We don't do the talking, the patient does the talking. And we're going to get into this in many different ways during the course of this session. But I'm going to keep coming back to it. If I don't, bring me back to it, because that is by far the most important thing. Again, not the doctor doing the talking, the patient doing the talking, and the doctor listening. And the doctor taking notes. It used to be the patient took notes from what the doctor said. And it doesn't work that way anymore. We take notes for the patient and we listen to the patient. That's what's expected. That's about the customer service experience. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm completely withholding judgment about that, or at least I'm trying to. But that is what's important. To provide a customer service experience for our patients. This is such a different relationship than it was on the TV doctors and way back when. That people listening don't even know the names of the TV shows. I can't even remember. Marcus Welby, I think. I never watched it. I'm not that old. But any old doctor TV show, or when patients went to see doctors way back when. So let's backtrack a second, because I mentioned the magic word listening. And we're going to talk about being the doctor the patients want and how everything we need to do involves listening. But I think let's backtrack to the initial encounter. Not the initial encounter with a doctor, but the initial encounter in our office. Being the doctor the patients want. I think, number one, when they walk in that door and they meet our staff, that's the initial encounter before our initial encounter with them. That staff has to have the customer's always right mentality and attitude. That same customer service experience. In our office, we have to take care, and I'm proud of this. I think this is the way it always should have been, and I'm surprised it wasn't before. We need to make sure our office is clean and neat and uncluttered and open and has a pleasant atmosphere. The days of the cluttered office with all sorts of accessorizing and materials to read, magazines on the counter, newspapers on the counter, that doesn't belong anymore. First of all, who wants to read a newspaper or magazine? Everyone has their cell phone. And I see a newspaper magazine in a doctor's office, I see no point. What is it? It looks cluttered. It doesn't belong. We need to have an open environment, not an enclosed space, because open is the word, with friendly customer service staff. Clean and neat. I'm not saying we have to posh out our waiting rooms to the hilt with beautiful furniture and all these nice adornments. And no, that isn't. Just clean and neat and open and inviting. That's providing an initial encounter for the customer experience that our patients are looking for. Our staff also need to be very attentive to what people are doing in the waiting room. If they're not being seen when their appointment time is, because part of the customer service experience is that their time is just as valuable as our time. And that's true. I'm not going to say that's not true. It used to be you waited, out the door for the doctor in cluttered waiting rooms, and that's not the doctor anyone wants. That's not providing the patient experience in today's world. Our staff needs to be attentive to what patients' needs are and patients' frame of reference of time. Now, sometimes patients have unrealistic expectations. There's nothing we can do about that. But I think it's important to, especially if we're running late, to notify the patients of what the time frame is when we think the doctor will be able to see them. At least an idea. That gives the patients an idea, or the idea, that their time is of importance. So customer service, staff friendliness. That's important. Notifying patients about time. How much time do they have to wait if it's not going to be within 5 or 10 minutes of their scheduled appointment time? Now, I have patients all the time who come late for their appointments, all sorts of different excuses, and the most common is traffic. I live in the Washington, D.C. area, and traffic is horrendous and and unpredictable at all hours of the day. Business hours, I should say, because that's when we're working. So people often come late. And, how do you run a schedule of every 10 to 15 minutes seeing a patient, or 20 minutes, when someone comes 15, 20 minutes late? So you're going to be behind. So, and when it's not important to give an excuse as to why you're running behind like that. Okay, last patient ran late. Well, that's not an excuse you want to give. I'm sorry, we're running behind. We're trying to get everyone in. It's difficult to keep everyone's schedules. The doctor is going to be X amount of minutes late, or we estimate this. Can we get you something? Can we get you some water, some coffee? Customer service. I don't know if I would go with coffee, actually, because you don't want to stain anything of your room and in your waiting room if it's spilled, but maybe water would be a nice thing to ask to give a patient, or a candy. We just be respectful of them, because that's a customer service experience. That's in today's world. And in a way, that's listening. Our front staff needs to listen to what that patient says when they come in before they see us. What are the patient's needs? Very important. How can we be the doctor the patients expect of us? Listening to the patient's needs when they walk in. Making sure the patient is aware of what's going on in our office. Okay, so that's the first thing. So what happens when the patient gets taken back into the room? Again, we want the office to be neat and clean, not dirty. Make sure it's clean and uncluttered, open in all aspects, not just the waiting room. Patient is taken in by your medical assistant, your receptionist, whoever takes the patient back, yourself. Take the patient back. What's the first thing you want to do when you greet a patient? Smile. Wouldn't you notice if someone smiled when you first met them? We're providing a customer service experience. Yes, we're physicians. Okay, so what? The patient is here for our help, but a smile goes a long way. And it's so hard to do that, patient after patient after patient. When I first started years ago, 20 plus years ago, I didn't realize, but I was always trying to spend as much time as I could when I was in with the patient. But that would put me a little behind when I would go to the next patient's room. I would rush in and sit down and say hello, hello, I'm Dr. Green. I wouldn't smile, and I would walk in the door like I was coming off the plane and had to get to my house right away or something. In a rush. And it's not a good approach. No matter how rushed you are, walk into the room slowly, methodically, no matter how far behind you are, and smile. Greet that person. Shake that person's hand. Look at that person and be relaxed, not hurried. Being the doctor the patients want. Patients want someone who's not, no matter how behind you are, an hour or two behind, it doesn't matter. We're on time, not giving the appearance of being rushed when you're with them. When you're with them, from when you walk in the door, not after you walk in the door, from the moment you touch, they first see your face. So important. If you're running late, I think the first thing it's important to do is apologize. Whatever excuse you want to make. I'm sorry, I'm doing my best today. There's some patients who had urgent needs that we didn't know about, but we had to take care of. Sometimes there's an accident on the freeway. Patients were coming late. Whatever happens, people understand. They have lives also. They know what's going on. But again, being the doctor the patients want is being honest and straightforward and not rushed. The next thing I think you want to do is start listening. Again, this magic word over and over and over, being the doctor of the patients you want. Start listening to them. They all have a story to tell. And I know, especially in dermatology, their stories are usually oftentimes completely irrelevant to what the diagnosis and treatment is going to be. They have all sorts of crazy ideas. You know what? Maybe they're crazy, maybe they're not, I should say. Over the years, I found often the story is not helpful in making the diagnosis, but we need to listen. And that's hard because when someone walks in and they say, look at this spot, doc, and it occurred, 5 days after I was in the Bahamas, and I was stung by coral on another part of my body, and this appeared on the second part of my body, and I know it's related, and I need an antibiotic for it. That's not possible, but listen. And the truth is, and this is really hard for me, and I make this mistake over and over again, don't tell them it's not possible if their story is crazy. I mean, you want to listen to them. You want to be sympathetic. Well, coral reefs, in fact, you can certainly get infection from a coral reef, but it'd be very unlikely, certainly maybe remotely possible, but very unlikely that it could come in a second area that was unrelated to the touch in your Bahamas 2 years ago. Say it happened 2 years ago. Even make it less likely. Patients want to know they've been listened to and you're respecting their train of thought. And that's important. And it's hard to do when sometimes they have these stories that just don't fit to our rational scientific minds who know the process and know that this may just be a benign keratosis, which is completely unrelated to coral or anything else. But listening to the story is very important, and acknowledging the story, listening to them and acknowledging. I'll add that word acknowledge, because you can listen and not acknowledge. And if you don't acknowledge, then listening doesn't really help, because people do need acknowledgement. I guess that's part of listening. So acknowledge them, hear them out. Now, sometimes that's hard when we're in a time crunch. We only have so X amount of minutes. We're already behind. Hearing a story about something that happened 2 years ago, has no relevance. It can be difficult. But it's important to listen, acknowledge, and don't dismiss. It's sort of like the customer's always right experience, I guess, going back to that. The patient's not always right. The patient's often wrong about their ideas. But we have to give them the respect and acknowledgement and credence to that idea, no matter how far-fetched it may seem. I think that's what's important. I'm as guilty as anyone of not doing that time after time after time. It's very hard to do day in and day out, many, many times a day. But that's what it's about, becoming the best doctor our patients need, what patients want. So we want to listen. We want to be respectful of their opinion. It's an active listening and acknowledgement. Very important. We want, after the patients tell their story, we want to tell them what we think. And oftentimes that means taking notes of the patient, I find, because it's hard. When think about it, when you want to try and reverse roles, they don't know what we know. They don't know the process by which whatever we're thinking of develops, the chemistry, the biochemistry behind it, the science behind it. So what's obvious to us is not obvious to someone else. So a lot of times we have to say the same thing several times over and over. Or you need to write it down for our patients. Or if they want to write it down, give them time. Have them repeat it over and over so they can write it down. Take notes in their cell phone if needed. Or we write it down for them. I find that's often quicker. So listening, active listening, acknowledging, be respectful of their opinion, and then we can tell them what we think. This is very different from being the doctor patients wanted, like I said, 40, 50 years ago. It was the doctor was right. Whatever the doctor said was right. And patient took all the notes, never questioned the doctor's authority. And that's it. So how many times, too, talking about crazy stories, do patients come in saying they know they have this because they read about it on the internet, or their friend told them that that's what it was because their friend read about it on the internet. The friend who has nothing to do with, knows nothing about medicine, but they know because their friend told them. We hear that over and over and over again. Be respectful. You know what? The customer is right, to a certain extent in this regard. Yes. You know what? I'm glad you read that on the internet. I'm glad you've tried to learn about something in our skin. It's nice you're taking an interest in the condition you're trying to diagnose that you have. However, and then you go on to what you think it is, and all the time, though, acknowledging and giving credence to what they thought they had, no matter how far-fetched. Again, being respectful of their opinion. And Lord knows how many times we hear stories that we know don't fit. Being scientifically rational, even though the friend told them it was. So we want to give them respect for their time. We want to explain to them, sometimes multiple times, because they don't understand the science we understand. They don't have the background we have. And it's going to go over the head the first 2 times we say it. They don't even know we're saying it. That's happened to me when I've been in places like an accountant's office or something like that. They'll explain something to me and I'll ask a question like, they never told me. And they told me 5 minutes before, but it didn't really sink in. I didn't really get it. Same thing with patients with us. So be respectful of their time, answer their questions, no matter how silly, even if we said it 5 times. That's part of being the doctor. That's part of providing a good customer service experience. We can do all this quickly. It doesn't necessarily take half an hour each time. We can work on it. Our medical assistant's there to help as well. We want to not rush through things. We want to take our time. When we're seemingly for the patient, again, calm, relaxed manner with the patient. Doctors don't want to see someone in a rush. I'm an old-fashioned doctor in a way. I never take my cell phone into a patient exam room. I keep my cell phone at my desk. I don't use it when I'm seeing patients unless I get a break and I go to my office, go to my desk. And now I have an Apple Watch, unfortunately, which sometimes distracts me, but I try not to look at that either when I'm in a patient's room. And the Apple Watch is silenced, but still, it vibrates in your hand and you feel it. That's not good. The patient's phone can go off. Now, I don't think we have to have respect for someone. You're in the middle of an exam and giving a patient instructions. They get a phone call and say, "Excuse me." They start chatting with their friend. That's disrespectful, and I would not say I'm encouraging that. But patients usually, when their phone goes off, don't answer it. I don't even want my phone in the room with a patient. Certainly, patients don't want a doctor distracted by his or her cell phone or his or her Apple Watch. That time with a patient is sacred between doctor and patient. I think that's crucial in establishing the doctor-patient relationship. Cell phones have no place in a patient exam room. And I'm going to say looking at Apple Watches either. No place. There is no reason. So that's something I should say, of course, stays out of it. Just think about it. When you're ordering food at McDonald's, does the person taking your order ever stop to answer the cell phone in the middle of taking your order? No. Customer service. When you're at the shoe store looking at shoes, and the guy is directly, or the woman is directly helping you find a pair of shoes, do they answer the cell phone in the middle of helping you try on a new pair of shoes? No. It's the same customer service experience we want to provide. It's just what's expected today. So let's not rush through instructions, no matter how often we have to repeat things. And I think we're sort of moving on to the next section here that I want to talk about. I think part of what doctors and or patients want their doctor to be is to have a collaborative partnership with their doctor. Not an authoritative partnership, but a collaborative partnership with their doctor. I think that's the way things are. That's what patients want. There may still be patients, older patients, who want that authoritative relationship, and everything I'm telling you now about customer service experience doesn't, you don't have to do that. That doesn't fit with that type of patient. But I think 99% of the patients today want a collaborative relationship. They want you to listen to them. They want you to hear that far-fetched theory about a coral bite they got 2 years ago causing the benign keratosis in another part of their body, which we know just happens because of aging and has nothing to do with anything else. They've looked at it on the internet. They've done their research. They want to be heard, even if it's crazy. We want to have a collaborative relationship. We want to work with them. When when I pick a therapy for a patient, this is something I've always done. Even back 25 years ago, when it probably wasn't such a good idea, it certainly is now, is I've always worked on coming up with a therapy with a patient. I never say, I'm going to give you this, this, and this, because even if I explain it, blah, 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 I want to say, what do you think about this approach? This is why I'm giving you this approach, or I'm suggesting this approach. What do you think about that? This is my idea to work with your idea. And this is how I want our partnership to work. I think that's what the patients want. And again, it's sort of part of the customer service experience. And it's about listening to the patient, what they said earlier, and coming up with a dual approach. It's a collaborative partnership. People want to partner with their doctors these days. The doctor is a partner in their healthcare that they can go to. And they can really go to us like never before. I mean, they can text us, they can email us, they can do it through the portal. They can call us the old-fashioned way. Multiple ways of getting a hold of us. And I've had my share of, sometimes it's not right. I've had my share of phone calls about prescription refills at 2 a.m. because CVS is open 24 hours. A patient realizes at 2 a.m. they're out of a prescription. And especially being a dermatologist, it's usually not a life or death prescription or something that can't wait a few days. They'll call me at 2 a.m. I'm not saying that's appropriate. I do tell those patients, I'll tell you what, why don't you call me during business hours? You'll be okay for 2 or 3 days, not at 2 a.m. But that's not the right approach. But people in this world, unfortunately, we as physicians have less boundaries with our patients. And less boundaries, actually, in a way, that's one of the reasons why it's a collaborative, not authoritarian relationship. The boundaries are gone. The doctor on the pedestal day is gone. Those boundaries between doctor and patient, they're gone. Every patient thinks they're a doctor. They've read it on the internet. Their friends told them. So we want to work with them. We want them to be happy. It's about building trust. It's a new word, trust. I think is very important with our patients. So we want to work on that collaborative relationship, building trust with our patients. We're in it for the long term with them. And I don't think, and part of the reason I think I work with patients in a collaborative effort in building trust, not an authoritarian effort, is I don't want them to think that I'm perfect. I'm some sort of figure on a pedestal that's making decisions and directing their healthcare that is always right and correct. I want them to think I'm human, just like anyone in customer service. I'm not perfect. I'm human, but I'm with this together. Another human, we're doing the best that he can with another human to get the best possible outcome. It's not black and white. I'm human and I'm here with them. And I think that's important. I think that's what patients want. It's being the doctor your patient wants. The human side, not authoritative side, the collaborative side, the trust side, working together side, and of course the listening side. You can't have trust without listening and acknowledging. And in this day and age, it's so hard to sometimes work with patients. I have a laptop, not a laptop, a notepad, Surface Pro, as for my EMR, electronic medical records of my patient. And I type. A lot of doctors still have their medical assistant type. I type my notes. I'm anal about that because I don't trust the medical assistant to type. So I'm typing, and it's hard to look at the patient in the eye and work with the patient when you're typing a note, but we have to do it. And I apologize to patients all the time. I blame the EMR. I hate using EMR because when I didn't have the electronic medical records, EMR, I handwrote things. I had plenty of time to look and touch and examine the patient. I'm doing so much documentation, which is such a pain in my opinion, that the documentation and this and that's gone on in the last 10, 15 years is crazy, making our life much more difficult. That's a whole nother podcast, and that's a complaint podcast. But it's much harder to look the patient in the eye when you're typing all the time. But how can you establish a collaborative, trusting relationship if you're not looking at someone in the eye? But you have to do it. You have to acknowledge, listen, and you can't listen to someone if you're typing, that's for sure. Worst thing is when someone's talking and you're listening to them, you are really listening to them, but you're sitting there in front of the screen typing whatever they say, they're not going to think you're listening. So we need to stop. We need to listen. no matter how hard it is in our daily activity with all the things we have to do. I think it's important when we're it's part of developing trust and working with the patients in a collaborative way, is to speak their own language. The old doctor from 50 years ago would say to the patient, say when they gave him a diagnosis of, let's pick psoriasis, you would say, you have psoriasis, very common. I'm going to give you this treatment and that treatment. You're going to take 2 pills a day this day and 4 pills this day, and take it with food or not food. Take these other pills the other days. I'll see you in 4 weeks. There's no explanation there. And there's nothing personal about that. You're not really speaking their language. Well, psoriasis, what's that? How do you spell psoriasis? Now, I would say, well, I think you have psoriasis, which is very common, probably inherited skin condition. But psoriasis isn't just on the skin. It can represent inflammation going on throughout the body. Here's how you spell it, Psoriasis. You can look it up. Here's a great web resource, the National Psoriasis Foundation, psoriasis.org. They have lots of great information for you to learn about your skin condition. It's common. Don't worry about it. We're here to help. These are the treatment options. Let's discuss them, and I go on. But the treatment options are not just, here's this pill, let's take this. Here's choice A. Choice A has these pros and these cons. Now, I'm not spending 30 minutes with the patient. This can be done quickly. But it's done in a collaborative, not an authoritative manner, and it's in clear language. Not using medical jargon. Or people would say there's an initials for psoriasis, PSA. Well, you have PSA. Well, then no one knows that's psoriatic arthritis. You have PSO, you have psoriasis. Things are explained in simple layman's terms. That's what we need. How can you be a good doctor or patient if you're not explaining what you want to do in layman's terms? And then again, making them participants in your decision, making sure they participate in your decision. This is a classic example. So many times, I'm sure most doctors do this. I'm not alone. But think about it. How many times have you had a patient who comes in with that benign keratosis and they're sure it's cancer and they're so concerned? And it's benign keratosis. It's crazy to do anything for it. If you want to, you can cosmetically remove it. But we biopsy it. We biopsy it for cancer. Why? Because the patient wants it. That's what they want. If we just tell them we're not authoritative, we can tell them, of course, we want to tell them, listen, I really think it's benign. And so, of course, I tell them this all the time. You don't have to worry. Please rest assured, it's nothing dangerous. But doc, I can't sleep. It's important to me. I really know it's cancer. It's growing quickly. It's 3 times the size it was yesterday. Then offer them a biopsy. Offer them. Maybe they'll see the light and say, oh, you know what? I don't need it. But you made that offer. And you offer to be part of their team. You're acknowledging them. You're listening to them. And there's nothing wrong with biopsying something, even if you know it's benign, to check for cancer. If that's what your patient really wants, that's being the doctor your patient wants. They're going to respect you more for doing that. Believe it or not, I know it. Well, you should believe it. It makes perfect sense. They're going to respect you more for biopsying something you know is benign than telling them authoritatively that it is benign. Don't worry about it. Go home. That was the doctor 50 years ago. That's not the doctor today. I think another thing that needs to be emphasized is remembering things about the patient. When you're talking about a long-term relationship with the patient that you want to have over the years, is remembering things about them. Now, my memory was much better when I was younger. It's not so good anymore. But one thing I've always done, and a lot of doctors do this, and you probably do this as well too, is take notes about the patient. So that when the patient comes back, the patient was telling you about the recent trip to Bermuda, you'll remember, or they're about to go on a trip to Bermuda, you'll remember to ask them about it. Or if they tell you that they have 3 children, well, you ask them about their children. Oh, how are those children? Make notes. People are shocked when it seems you remember that. The notes really help. Personalization, remembering things about them is very important. Now, it's hard to do that for every single patient, and I don't do that for every single patient, but I try and do as much as I can, especially if I learn an interesting tidbit about a patient's life or what they do for a living or their family or events. Take notes about it. So the next time they come in, it's front and center that you'll be able to recall that and talk to the patient about that. It helps a lot for building that collaborative relationship and improving the customer experience the patient has in their office, in your office. Very important. So we want to take notes on the side. We want to speak their language. We want to sit down and talk to them, have a discussion with them. And this is something, it's a little aside, but I think it's very important too in establishing the customer relationship experiences. You never want to be standing above a patient, looking at them, looking down at them. Say the patient's sitting in the chair. I sit in a stool. I move into getting closer to the patient when I'm talking to the patient. I want to be across the room. Who wants to have a customer service experience where the doctor's on the other side of the room, not close to them? Who wants to have a customer service experience? What a customer service experience do you have when you're 5 feet above the other person, looking down on them? That's not an equal relationship. That's not a partnership. These are all little tidbits that I've thought over the years, and again, most probably thought about that. And if there's something I'm missing, please write in and tell me there's something that we're missing, or something you've learned that we're missing.
I have a question. How do
Sure.
you guide a patient on their internet use? For example, when they're diagnosed with psoriasis, making sure they're going to the right sites rather than that one site that 1 out of every 10 million people that are diagnosed with it have this terrible side effect.
So I try and give what I think are accurate websites as much as possible. And like psoriasis.org I mentioned earlier, I think is the best website for people who have psoriasis. And the Acne and Rosacea Society is a good, credible website for people with acne, and the National Hyperhidrosis Society for people with underarm sweating. And then we have our national organization websites, like the American Academy of Dermatology has a section for people with all sorts of skin disease, and the American Society for Dermatologic Surgery has a section for people with skin cancers and cosmetic concerns. They have a public-facing section. So I always refer people to those websites because the credible websites that people go, and I'll put credible in quotes, the credible websites that people go to, like Medscape or what's another one that people go to?
WebMD?
WebMD, that's what I was thinking of. Thank you, Lila. Yeah, a lot of that, I think the information's incorrect. I don't know who's writing material on there. I mean, so I discourage people from going there. But believe it or not, but I'm not saying those sites aren't that credible. There are so many worse sites. I mean, listen, I'll take WebMD over 95% of the websites out there. But I think a lot more can be learned from the websites I just mentioned, from the American Academy of Dermatology, AAD.org or ASDS.net, the American Society for Dermatologic Surgery, or psoriasis.org, acne and rosacea.org. I don't know what the hyperhidrosis website is off hand, but National Eczema Association is another good organization that has good information for patients with skin disease. So there's always legit websites, I think, for most medical conditions, but there's so many more unlegit websites. So, and people get a lot of their information from WebMD, so it usually puts people in sort of the right direction, but I don't think it's a complete resource, and it's not one I would recommend, but it's not bad. A lot of times, the internet is a source for all the wrong things, and people think they have this X, Y, and Z, and from the internet, and it's usually nowhere close because the internet's scary. It's very scary.
Okay, I've known of doctors telling patients don't Google it. That's the first thing they're going to do when you tell them not to do something. They're of course going to do it.
Yeah, of course they're going to do it, and I usually tell patients that's why it's good to give them a credible website, because when you Google it, you get all sorts of crazy things. And if I'm going to give patients a diagnosis, and they're of course going to Google it right away, I want to give them a credible resource so that they get good, credible information. Sometimes I'll write give even a disclaimer that, don't, be careful what you do, because it may say psoriasis is caused by diet or something like that, something I know that's not true because studies have shown that. So some sort of, or don't get vaccinations, because they go to these crazy websites and stuff like that. I should use crazy in quotes, but I think uncredible websites. Of course you want to vaccinate our children. So you want to send them in the right direction. Google, it's okay to Google, but Google in the right direction. And that's part of collaboration, I think, working with a patient. Because the internet's really changed everything in the last 20, 25 years. It's really changed the relationship we have with patients, what patients are expecting from us, and what we expect from patients and how we interact with patients. And so, one other thing I can go back and say is also, before you walk into the room, I neglected this, I forgot. Before you walk in the room with the patient, before you walk in calmly into the patient room, you want to review the patient history. One, like I mentioned, to personalize things. If you remember things about them, or you don't really remember it, you jotted notes down about them, but also to review their history. I don't remember how many skin cancers patient X has had over the last 10 years, where those cancers were located every time the patient comes in. I need to review that before the patient comes in. I need to know what their history is. So it takes a few seconds, but you don't want to walk in the room and do that when you're in the room with the patient. It's good to do it before you walk in the room. It takes 5-10 seconds. It's not hard. With EMR, I think it takes longer because you got to click, 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 click. But all right, that's just the world we live in. And you have to click through the electronic medical records, and I think paper's quicker. But I'm an old person. That's the way I grew up with. But walking into the room prepared, I think, is very important when you walk into the room as well in a slow, methodical, easy fashion. So, and another thing I think that's important is experience. Everyone wants their doctor to have experience. There's those commercials on TV where someone goes to the doctor and they don't have the, how many times are you good at this procedure, doctor? I'm okay. Well, how many times have you done it? Well, I do it. That doesn't breed, that commercial, hopefully you guys remember those commercials I'm talking about, but that commercial doesn't breed confidence. You want to have experience. You want to show the patient you have experience. And I don't think, where we went to medical school, as a physician, it's not so much about education. And especially as dermatologists or plastic surgeons or dentists, what we're doing, where we went to school is really irrelevant. Our training and our experience is much more important. It's not the education, it's the experience. You want to stress experience. My brother-in-law, for example, is contemplating doing something, or he has no choice, but he's going to have a surgery. And the first doctor didn't really breed confidence in him that he went to. And he's looking elsewhere. You want to make sure you go to that person. Well, have you done this before, doctor? Oh, many times. If you haven't done it before, I'm not saying to lie, but you want to tout your experience. People want someone who exudes confidence and has the experience to get them where they want to go and works with them. I think that's all very important. Very, very important. So I guess I'm gonna summarize and then open up to questions. But being the doctor your patients want comes down to listening and acknowledging. If that's the whole 45 minutes of what we talked about, listening and acknowledging, so important. But it starts with the initial encounter. When they walk in our office, the whole staff has to listen and acknowledge. Be respectful of their time. Clean offices, neat, open, inviting. Everyone listens. Everyone smiles. Everyone serves. Everyone is at the same level for customer service as the patient. No one stands above anyone else. Listen to our patient. Listen, acknowledge, acknowledge, acknowledge. Collaborate with the patient. It's a partnership. We want to be personal. We want to remember things about them. We want to speak their language. We want to speak not doctor, medical jargon. You have toxicodendron dermatitis. Well, that means you have poison ivy. Well, you don't want to say you have toxicodendron dermatitis. That's not making you look good in front of the patient. It's not what we want. You have poison ivy. Use regular words. Be prepared and repeat. Repeat and repeat and repeat. We always want to repeat things for our patients because they don't know. They're not coming from the same frame of reference as we are. So I want to end by thanking everyone who has listened to this archive session, and please write a review and share the link via chat with everyone, and ask questions too. I mean, what have I missed in my customer experience session here, being the best doctor that we can be? Give us feedback. And of course, I want to thank Equa Marketing for sponsoring this aesthetic water cooler. I've so much enjoyed doing these water cooler series, and I'm so honored that people are accessing the sessions that are archived and hopefully learning a lot from the sessions. But Equa Marketing, this is what they do. They help us doctors, dentists, plastic surgeons, and dermatologists work on internet marketing, dominate internet marketing, social media, and outclass our competitions. We want to be the best physicians we can be. We want to have the patients. We want our patients to be the best partner for our patients that we can be. I think that's very important. And our next topic for November 4th, 4 weeks or 4 Mondays from today, is about mentorship. So we're going to spend some time talking about mentorship. I'm looking very much forward to that. And for now, Lyle, do you have any more questions? I'll take any more questions that you have to make this a better archive session.
I do have one that's kind of off topic, though. You talking about patients running late. How do you approach it when you have somebody that is chronically late and is abusing your good heart, letting them come in late if they're stuck in traffic, but they're always have an excuse? They never bother to be on time and respect your time.
That's a good question. I don't really have people who, can't recall having a chronic late patient over and over and over. But usually what we do, actually I do. I take that back. I do. What we do is we tell them, I'm sorry, your appointment time has passed. We have patients who have appointments at this time. Please wait. It may be a while, but we will work you in whenever we catch up and have a free moment. Sometimes I wait 10 minutes. Sometimes I wait an hour. But that's usually what I have them. I do at that point in juncture. So I don't do that, but my staff does that because we get them when they're in the waiting room before they're brought back. But if anyone has a better way of handling it, I'm certainly open to suggestions, but that's usually what we do. Because the people who come on time, I think, need to be seen on time. That's just the way I do things. I'm very respectful of someone's time. And we do the best we can, and it's not possible a lot of the time, but we do the best we can. But most importantly, we want to be respectful of someone's time because they've taken the time to come to visit with us. So I'm going to end it here. Thank you for listening to this session, and please give us some feedback. And thank you again, Equa. Look forward to talking with you all again next month about mentorship.